Dun, da, dun. Welcome to another episode of
Conversations with the columns.
We're Convo.
Convo with the columns.
We will converse.
I like it. I like this interrupted one-on-one time.
Spouses take note.
If you want to have fun conversations with your spouse.
What is
Yeah.
the topic today?
Well, I have been processing spiritual bypassing.
So, what is the official definition of spiritual bypassing?
I don't know if this is like the official definition, but if you were to Google it,
Google says
Google says spiritual bypassing is the tendency to use spiritual beliefs and practices to avoid or deny difficult emotions and psychological issues. It was actually coined by psychologist John Wellwood, who was a Buddhist. And yeah, some examples would be like minimizing pain, dismissing suffering with cliches like God never gives you more than you can handle.
don't get me started on that one.
Yeah. Overemphasis on positivity, constantly focusing on the positive and deny it's fine and
I
denying
do that all the time.
Yes, that's been a real struggle.
I know.
Avoidance of the shadow, refusing to engage with or acknowledge what are seen as negative aspects of the self, like anger, jealousy, fear. Like, I don't have any of that. Or avoid that. Like, oh, God will be mad if I'm fearful, or God will be upset if I'm angry. So you just avoid it. Detachment as a defense, using spiritual detachment to avoid the messiness and full range of human experience, and rushing to enlightenment, trying to get over it or reach a state of enlightenment before fully confronting. And
That'd be like somebody that just pounds a mushroom.
yeah, I guess that could be it too. Like I said, I think love me some worship, but I think you can do that through worship even. Yeah. Just engaging in that before confronting difficult emotions and life experiences. Those are just some examples.
So, when you experience somebody that would be exhibiting spiritual bypassing,
Mhm.
give an example of that.
Well, I did it for a long time. So I'm pretty familiar with it. I actually didn't know there was a term for it until recently, but definitely know that's what I used to do. And what that would look like would be anytime there was something hard that came up that I was experiencing in life, experienced like really hard things, I would typically go to quoting scripture over it, which isn't a bad thing. But just immediately go to declarations, the promises of God, and then I would literally go find something fun to do. Like I was big on avoiding pain with fun. And like my girls before we were married, our two older girls, like I would even like for me experiencing a negative emotion that didn't feel good, I I considered it as if I wasn't trusting God. So it was a lot of self-condemnation in that. So if I felt a negative emotion, I would instantly be, oh, Millie, you're not trusting God. So let's just pretend. So there was no honesty between me and God either. And so I would just go to, no, everything's going to be fine. The word says this, the word says that, but I would never really acknowledge what the pain was or where the pain was coming from. That was a lot.
That was a lot because I think there sounded like maybe two different topics in the way that you described your coping mechanism. One being the term spiritual bypassing.
Mhm.
A second is either disassociation or coping mechanisms
Mhm.
like fun.
Yes, but I see it not only as fun, right? That was my coping. But oftentimes I will see people use worship, which I love to worship. I love
So,
to worship.
but I guess because what I can sense is a lot of people would begin to say, well, where does faith even fit into this process?
Mhm.
So, what's the difference between somebody, air quotes, well, we'll keep it open ended, air quote. Sorry, that's for all the nonverbal people that might find my humor. What's the difference between spiritual bypassing and
Mhm.
faith?
I believe one is faith is you're not ignoring the problem, you're not ignoring the pain. You're being super honest with God. Hey, this is what I'm experiencing, but I'm choosing to trust you, but you're not denying the problem and you're not denying yourself the opportunity to process through the emotions. Spiritual bypassing is you are denying yourself, stuffing emotions, not being honest about the way it's affecting you or what you're experiencing. And so it's like putting on a mask of, no, I'm going to pretend this doesn't hurt. I'm going to pretend that I'm not experiencing pain in this because oftentimes what happens is you'll be I can't if I what I was telling myself in those moments was, if I get sad or if I begin to doubt or if I get afraid, then I'm not trusting God and I'm not gonna have enough faith, and then He's not gonna reward me with what I'm believing for. And so then I would completely let's just shut all that down because then I can be God will see me as faith-filled, trusting, all these things, and I will be pleasing to God because I'm full of faith.
So then what would be the difference between spiritual bypassing and a word of faith movement?
I don't wanna put a blanket on that, but I know I picked up a lot of spiritual bypassing in the name it, claim it atmosphere. Do I and here's where it gets a little tricky, right? Because I am a big person of standing in my truth, declaring truth over myself, declaring truth over us, over our family, over our situations. I'm big on declarations. But if I go straight to declarations without processing what the situation is. Number one, acknowledging why do I need a declaration, right? And then processing, okay, oh, wow, that's attached to a lot of hurt. Have I dealt with that? And then, okay, God, being really honest. For me, it's just being really honest with God, saying, "Hey, I'm experiencing this. I think God is perfectly okay with our humanity."
So, curious question, because this would probably be a topic that I would sense that you have a bit more awareness around than I. Wouldn't necessarily put you in that chair to say you're the leading expert on spiritual bypassing.
Please do not.
But what I am saying is just because we process oftentimes very different.
Yes.
Um, I think about one, I would even just insert kind of the caveat in this conversation, which is we're just wanting to talk about things that sometimes don't get discussed. So this conversation isn't an indictment to anybody,
No, I'm using my own personal
for
story.
sure.
Yeah.
But even with our own story, it can at times bleed back into people that may not have the same perspective or belief system. So the only caveat
Sure.
is we're part of the fun that you and I are having in these conversations is processing real time with no script,
Mhm.
and not necessarily processing publicly our stuff, but processing topics that don't get discussed a lot. So this
Yes.
becomes the caveat to us getting into more of this conversation.
Yes.
Okay. So because the question between what's the difference between spiritual bypassing and a word of faith movement, that is a very big question, right?
I should say, I don't really know if I wanna touch that particular.
But in general, what I'm also hearing you say, and I have witnessed in other people, is spiritual bypassing also looks like avoiding processing vulnerability with humans
Yes.
and only processing vertically with God.
Yes, yes, but I contend if you're having a hard time being vulnerable with the people across from you, you're probably having a hard time being vulnerable with God too.
Sure. But the reason why I bring that up is because when we're doing vertical interactions with nobody speaking into how we're perceiving the interaction with God, then what can be true is that we can misinterpret and or misperceive what we believe the interaction to be.
You're gonna have to break that down a little bit.
So let's say, for example, I take this instance and I get hurt
Mhm.
and I engage spiritual bypassing. So I don't process that hurt with anybody. Don't even specifically process it with, say, people
Mhm.
outside of the person. Hypothetically, we'll just use you and I.
Mhm.
You hurt me, so I don't courageously come to you to communicate that hurt, but I also don't go to maybe a safe person and process that to make more sense of it before I choose to want to interact with you. And so I eliminate both you and a safe person to process with,
Mhm.
let's say a buddy, and I just process with God.
Mhm.
And so because I was hurt, it's not that the hurt isn't accurate. It's I'm only dialoguing what I perceived in that interaction between you and I. And then I'm having this whole conversation with God on how that whole thing unfolded. According to Britain, what you and I experience oftentimes with a lot of people is such a need to be seen or heard that they would then perceive God validating certain things about that dynamic that may or may not be accurate
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think
by way of validation. Well, I felt like
yes.
God said this, or God showed me this, or and so
Yeah.
there is maybe categories of spiritual bypassing
Yeah.
that maybe necessitate more conversations around when you're explaining a while ago, like, for example, you use worship.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? Like, where it would get more
Yeah.
nuanced?
I think that even kinda gets into, like, an accountability conversation too, and just, surrounding yourself with people to hold you accountable and seeking wise counsel and all of those things. But yes, and I think it gets super dangerous if you're not involving other especially the people that well, in a marriage, like, if I didn't have the courage to ever go to you and share with you, like, that's just not gonna work. It's just there would be no connection. There would be, lots of dishonest kindnesses happening, resentments would build, like, we could go down the list of the things that's gonna happen. But, yeah, I think for me, spiritual bypassing may look a little different than that. I think it is just using your beliefs and your faith to avoid processing pain or avoid being really honest.
So, what I'm hearing you say is you and I believe in God, in the Trinity. We
Mhm,
identify as Christians, but
mhm.
the term spiritual bypassing could be used in other facets of religion. Would that be correct?
Sure. Oh, yeah, for
Okay.
sure. Yeah.
And so then the essence would be to use religion,
Mhm,
acts of religion, works in religion, processes
mhm.
to avoid courageous interactions between people.
Yep, for sure.
And additionally, what I'm hearing you say is that it is the avoidance of processing the emotions around something and immediately moving into religious activities
Mhm,
rather than emotional intelligence.
mhm. Yes. Yeah.
So, like,
Yeah.
if you really annoyed me and I walked over and just began to rub Buddha's belly to self soothe,
Mhm.
that would be considered spiritual bypassing.
I guess so, I don't know, we don't have a Buddha in our house,
I
but
know we don't. I just,
but yes, maybe. I don't know what I shouldn't have said it that way. I don't know what Buddhists do, but if that's so yes, that would be yes. Instead of coming and even acknowledging with yourself, like, oh, that hurt, right? Like sometimes there are people that hurt us that aren't safe to go to say, hey, that really hurt. But I think just even acknowledging, hey, that really hurt it with you and yourself and with God. And then, like, hey, Abba, that really sucks. That hurt. I'm feeling this. And then really processing that. And then I absolutely believe there can be an exchange, right? And validation from God and pain and like comfort. Holy Spirit brings comfort. But if I was just to like go to God and say, I'm going to pray for that person because this is what I would do, right? Like somebody, if someone was to really hurt me, I would go to God and say, okay, God, I'm going to be the good Christian girl and I'm just going to pray for them. I'm going to declare that, blessing over them and your grace covers it, your blood covers it. And I would never acknowledge like, dadgum, that hurt, right? Like, and then I walk away not being completely honest with God, not being vulnerable. And we talked about this on the last one. Like, I believe that's where miracles happen is in a place of vulnerability because God can only work with honesty. And so if you're not being honest with how you're feeling, you're not making space for truth to come in. And so that's what I'm talking about, whether that's horizontally or vertically.
So, what I'm also hearing you say, though, is there is an aspect of spiritual bypassing that does not include vulnerability.
I don't think there is vulnerability in spiritual bypassing.
No, I'm just trying to clarify some of the nuance, which
Yes.
is the difference in the way that, one, you and I process.
Right.
But you might have some people over here that are tracking a lot of what you're saying just in the way that you're communicating your maybe your own, like, you reflect back on some of your own experiences, right? If I was to think about a time that I may have engaged in spiritual bypassing, the description for me would likely sound very different.
Let's hear it.
Well, the reason that I asked about vulnerability is because I believe that anytime that we're deflecting or avoiding, then we can't access vulnerability. So a while ago, you said declaring scripture, declaring truth over situations, right? Which to some degree was a lot of the word of faith, or is the word of faith
Yeah.
sort of perspective.
I'm still not opposed to that. There's just a process.
Sure.
Right.
But I think for me, like, I get into the nuance of sometimes it is really hard to tell the difference between what is the balance between too much introspective, too much processing, and no faith, no declarations, no
Mm-hmm.
trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding and in all your ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's real
For real. For sure.
because there's so many times that we only see a part of what's playing out. And so in our humanity, we're over here wanting to see the evidence of Romans 8:28. How are you going to work this to good? Right? So I think for me it would be a bit more on the other end where instead of spiritual bypassing, my tendency was a lot of control. I would almost act as a God to demand that this outcome turn out a certain way
Mm-hmm.
and feel very justified in that because I had been offended, hurt,
Kind of like you owe me.
self-righteousness,
Yeah.
right? So to me, it almost would still be on this line of what does an aggressive personality look like versus a passive personality?
Yeah. I like that. Yep.
In spiritual bypassing, it would show up different.
Yeah, I have said this often that I think performance, for me, performance in religion, and religion is just anything you have to do to create acceptance, right? And so I'll just use performance to take the Christianese out of it, but performance will bring one of two things. It'll either bring pride or condemnation. And that pride piece is, no, I deserve it because I did everything right.
Mhm.
And then the condemnation part is, I will never measure up. And so I'm not worthy of anything. So I think we're saying the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, which is the reason why I was just kind of getting deeper into the way that I think if I look back in any of my instances where I didn't have emotional intelligence tools
Mm-hmm.
and I was just operating out of self-preservation, self-defeating behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
power and control games, whatever language we want to use,
Yeah.
then I may still have a conversation with God, but it was more of what are you going to do for me? Because what about that did I deserve?
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't you protect me? all of it's I shouldn't say all of it. The way I think about my instances, if I would be able to identify with the term spiritual bypassing, it's still a victim mentality. And victim by definition, meaning that we don't feel like that we have the power to engage the circumstance any other way
Mhm.
than to essentially be rescued out of it and or attempt to persecute, which puts us into a drama triangle.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. So,
Yeah.
what I hear you say is like yours look like almost, not almost, like still, I think, out of that fear of not being good enough or shame, is what we call it, right? Like you pretty much just blame, like I've done everything right, right? And so this must be your fault that it's not working. Yeah. For with me, there was so much shame and condemnation. Like I'll never measure up. So I'll just pretend that nothing is going wrong. And I'll just pretend to be the good girl, even to God, hoping to kind of please him.
Yeah, which that's the only reason why I was wanting to nuance this a little bit more because what I don't relate well with is pretending.
Mhm.
Like, it just isn't something that I am very accustomed to interacting with,
Mhm.
nor does my nonverbal conceal it if I were to.
I don't know what you're talking about.
So so I think it's fun to just kind of look at the topic in different sides
Mhm.
because in general, though it can be a term, I want to be careful that it doesn't sound like we're creating conversations on topics like the term deconstruction,
Mhm.
right? Like so many people have moved into the topic of deconstructing their faith
Mhm.
when that may be accurate to describe something. The term has turned into something that really isn't oftentimes very healthy.
Yeah.
So this is another one of those to me. I'm less familiar with some of the idea in it
Hmm.
as far as like, how does that play out? How have I experienced it? I haven't necessarily processed it for me personally as much,
Yeah.
but I very much am familiar with, obviously, because we're in the Bible Belt.
Mhm.
You can walk up to somebody that's a believer and you can ask them how they're doing, and you'll get the proverbial answer that oftentimes, in some regard, can be considered spiritual bypassing because they're not
For
ever
sure.
really telling you about themselves. They're giving you a canned conversation. This is the pleasantry response that I'm supposed to have. I don't trust that if I actually say what's happening, that number one even be received, let alone preserved.
Yeah.
So I think to me, that term in that regard is super evident.
Yes.
But to watch how people utilize that in a deeper coping mechanism, probably not as much. Like, I probably wouldn't identify as well with those
Yeah.
as the way you're describing some of them.
Yes. No, I used a lot of them. Like even and I back to the worship part, like I love to worship. Like it's one of my favorite things to do is engage in worship. But if I'm experiencing pain and I go straight to worship, not to process and be honest, I mean, then that's spiritual bypassing. And I think there's a difference between two, like I'm gonna back up a little bit.
Another beat me.
Another beat beat. I back up a lot. Not that I live my life in reverse, but no going
So
backwards.
Mater made some success out of his ability to roll backwards.
But David was so honest with God, like in the book of Psalms and stuff. Like he was always so honest around what he was experiencing. And I think when I talk about that exchange, we see it so often in the Psalms that were written. And he would oftentimes start them, not always, but oftentimes start with heartache and then end with, "Oh, okay." And for me, it's like being really honest with my perfect daddy and running to him and saying, "Okay, dad, this really hurts. This hurts so bad." And then him reminding me of who I am, right? And then when he reminds me who I am, then I can't help but worship him back. I can't help but love him back. And it's the same thing. It's the same way that we mirror to our kids, right? Like if our little kids ran up to us and this is what I did to my girls, and they were like, somebody called me whatever at school, right? And if I immediately go, well, that's not who you are, let's just pray for them, right? Like, number one, I'm not validating my kid's pain. I'm teaching her how to avoid negative emotions, or I don't like to even use negative. I'm teaching them how to avoid emotions that may be painful. And even though, so I think what I'm trying to say is whenever, if I would have known when my girls would come up to me and say, hey, mom, so and so called me a bad name at school. And for me to say, oh, I'm so sorry. That must have really hurt. Like, how did you feel? Right? And then give them an opportunity to express how that really felt, and then walk them through that. Like, well, what do you know is true about you? Like, really give them an opportunity to run to Jesus and receive truth in that. And then it's okay to say, you know what? You know, hurt people, and they must have really been hurt today for them to hurt you. What would you like to do for that? And, like, how do you feel about that, that they're hurting, right? Like, how would you like to respond to that? And then, of course, whenever we stay in a place of compassion and curiosity, then we'll want to pray for that person.
So, if you have an individual that shows up and they're self-aware enough to know that they have a short fuse and don't do well with high levels of emotion,
Mhm.
and they found value in, let's just stay on the track of worship,
Mhm.
although I believe worship can happen in more ways than just playing music and
Mhm.
right, but for the sake of the context in that, so this person decides that they want to try to get back into more self-regulation by
Mhm.
engaging worship, how would how would you have a conversation with them and it not be viewed as spiritual bypassing?
I think I think using music, worship, whatever for self-regulation, I think is amazing. I think it's an amazing tool. But if you never go back and address what caused you to get that upset in the first place, you're still bypassing. You're not dealing with what's really driving the anger.
So fundamentally,
Mhm.
like I keep coming back to this because I want people to understand, spiritual bypassing is the avoidance of processing your own emotions,
Or
period.
pain. Yep.
And in lieu of doing that, it's immediately just engaging religious interactions
Mhm.
in lieu of personally processing those emotions.
Yes. Yep.
Because similarly to the topic of deconstruction, I think that there is a lot of different variances to where people are, and what would look permissible to one may actually look more avoidant to another.
I can see that.
So the topic itself is one that isn't super black and white, other than if you're not processing your own stuff and you engage religious activity, you're spiritually bypassing.
Yes. Yeah. For sure. Yes. Now, there have been times like, yeah, wake up from a weird dream, right? And you just feel off. Oftentimes, I'll throw on worship music right off the bat, but I'm still honest. I'm like, hey, Holy Spirit, that was wacky. I don't know what that was. This is really bothering me.
Bad pizza.
Bad pizza. I don't know, but my heart feels heavy. Like, I'm still honest about it, right? But sometimes there's really not a lot in that to process other than it was just what I would consider bad pizza or harassing dream. And
Yeah,
so
I think
just
would you agree that there's a difference between our dream life and the reality of a person interacting with hurtful behaviors?
yes, do they always feel the same? No, I mean, they can often feel the same, but yeah, they're two different things.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Because in a dream state, you can't reconcile a relationship.
Right, and it's not happening real time. I mean, it's
Well, it may or may not be as far as happening real time, but it's not a literal relationship
right.
that you can address real time
That's what
with
I meant.
another individual that has conscience that's choosing
Right.
behaviors
Right.
causing disconnection.
Yes.
So back to, it's the processing of the emotions
Mhm.
with the goal to connect and or choose to want to make yourself available to people.
I think an example would be that I witness sometimes, and I will say most of the time it is with, I shouldn't say that either. Yes,
Should I
because
play the Jeopardy theme song?
sorry, I'm trying to sort thoughts, but and be
Welcome to
honoring.
real time processing.
I process much slower. I don't know if I process slower, it just comes out way slower, maybe a lot more filtered than yours.
Dancing with Jesus before you say it. Sorry, that was funny.
I do it. I do a lot of dancing with Jesus. I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh, I think it's even become I am big on
Focus. Big on focus.
I am not big on focus. We are big on how you heal shame is replace lies with truth,
Okay.
right? And know how to
I can
get
agree with that. You lumped me in there really quick. I wasn't sure where you were going with that.
it and learning how to get your needs met in a healthy way.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's how we heal shame. But what happens often is someone may be able to identify a lie, but they're quickly going to, but God says, and they're not really going to give themselves permission to process where the lie came from and where it originated from, and give themselves permission to actually feel the brevity of that pain when that need wasn't met and a lie was adopted.
Sure.
And so therefore, I don't think there's a level of I think people can miss out on a depth of healing.
Would you agree? Again, this is a fairly generic assumption, but it seems to me that in instances like you just described, where they might acknowledge a lie, but they won't process the pain associated
Mm.
to how that evolved, it's oftentimes attached to the deepest trauma. And so the subsequent things that are less traumatic, maybe less painful, less, just to use the language, maybe horrific in details, become things that are off the table as well.
Mhm.
So what seems to be the case is that a lot of people who do have unprocessed trauma at a deep level won't even process the small things, because if that dam breaks, there's a fear that where would it stop? Because there's been so much stuffing for such a long period of time, or avoidance
Mhm.
in processing,
Yeah.
that the fear of that uncontrollable flood down the way from the dam,
Yeah.
that
For sure.
that seems to be the case.
Yes, and I don't want this conversation either to come across like I'm judging or I have all the answers, but what I have, I would say most cases that I have had the yes witnessed is there is such a lack of trust with their higher power. Like there's so much because no one showed up for me when this happened. When the experience happened and it was so hurtful, no one was there. And even if they knew that God was with them, they weren't given space to process the brevity of pain of it and be comforted.
Hey guys, it is our heart to try to bring authentic conversations to you about our experiences and the things that we are passionate about facilitating. That being said, we have a nonprofit that we are going to utilize to try to help resource this very video. I'm going to post a QR code in the link via Cash App. Feel free to donate if you feel inclined. If you value this, please like, share, subscribe, do all the things as we continue to prepare to bring more content and more valuable conversations to you.
So it sounds like you just kinda took us a little deeper in spiritual bypassing.
Are you surprised?
No,
I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing. But yes, so I think anytime we're spiritual bypassing, it's just a lack
so
of
would it be fair to say that it's just pandering to God?
yeah, that's pretty much what yes, pandering isn't a frequent word in my vocabulary, but
We are on
I
the 50-cent word topic today.
I felt like that was kinda what I said in the beginning. Like, um, yeah, just kinda Well, how would you describe pandering?
It's the right thing to do, but you don't believe it yourself.
Yeah, that's what I was saying in the beginning. Like, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to pray the right prayers. I'm going to say the right scriptures. I'm going to pray for those who hurt me. I'm going to do all the right things.
But you don't believe it.
I don't trust it. No, I don't believe it.
Is there a
It's-
difference between trusting it and believing it?
No, probably not. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I only pose that as a question because you and I frequently reference the trust cycle,
Hmm.
courtesy of Danny Silk,
Yeah.
and the ability to identify a need.
Mm.
Well, if what you're saying in doing the right things is a person's attempt to avoid communicating what they need so that it actually isn't rejected,
Mhm.
that in and of itself is playing a game, right?
Mhm.
It's one of the self-defeating behaviors. And so as we talk about it more, I'm just seeing different ways that some of it manifests.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, what you were saying earlier and what we believe to be true is all of what we do is a direct correlation to what we believe about ourselves.
Mhm.
So if behaviorally there's something that doesn't feel very authentic or genuine, then
Mhm.
you have to go back up the river to that thought process attached to emotions that essentially ends up being a lie related to what we're believing about ourselves that God did not say or doesn't believe about us.
Yes. And I think one of two things. It's either a lie we're believing about ourselves or a lie that we're believing about our higher power. Like the only reason I wouldn't choose to be vulnerable with God is because I'm not believing his nature.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me that's where it's interesting though whether or not, well, my caveat to it is this:
Mhm.
because of my belief system, I would say ours, but I won't speak for you. I don't even disassociate those two because if I don't believe it about myself, then what's true biblically is that I don't believe it about him either, because I am created in his image.
Right.
So,
Right.
right.
Yes.
But I do hear what you're saying in where people will go through the motions of those things in order to appease God.
Mhm.
It it sounds a lot to me like there's several instances, but the one story about Elijah and the prophets of Baal.
Mhm.
And essentially, he's mocking them when, in their attempt to call on Baal
Mhm.
to enact the altar that they built and consume that on their
Mhm.
behalf, he begins to mock them. So, the whole process of the prophets of Baal would be a pandering attempt to their God that they truly didn't believe because they had to go to such acts to attempt to get interaction.
Get their attention.
That may seem like a really big leap, but I mean, that's where my mind goes to immediately going, spiritual
Yeah.
bypassing is a lot like the prophets of Baal.
Yeah. Which I think too, though, like kind of back to your point, I think Baal represents the self sufficiency, like self do it myself.
Yes.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm unpacking your perspective earlier. Sorry. Yeah. Here's a question for you though. Like, I still think pride is just a byproduct of shame. Like, it just looks different. I still think pride is I've done everything right, but because if I really acknowledge that I'm not, if I miss the mark, then what would that say about me?
So, are you going to ask a question?
What are your thoughts?
Because I was I was listening and I'm waiting for your question. I definitely believe that there is merit to the point of pride being very relatable to shame. By definition, shame says I am what I did.
Yes. Yeah. You're saying whether good or bad. I meant like performance. It's still in your performance.
Well, anytime, I shouldn't say anytime. I want to be careful about declaring absolutes. Again, I process very black and white. It's one or the other.
You think?
Somebody's told me that. If that definition of shame is I am what I did, then the same would be true about pride.
Mm.
I am what I do. So in that regard, the question, do you ask me, do I think that they're the same?
Not the same. I just feel like they're both rooted in shame. I think pride is rooted in shame, right? Wasn't that the question?
Is it?
Do you think pride is rooted in shame?
I think it can be.
I think it is.
Well, this turns into an interesting conversation that almost feels off topic though,
Well,
because I immediately go to, I think it's listed in several places, but it's a Proverbs, pride comes before the fall. Why didn't it say a lack of identity?
I think it's all rooted in the lack of identity.
Oh, I know that. But if we're trying to subcategorize pride under shame,
Yeah.
but biblically it's used, I mean, this I haven't looked up this word and I don't have it memorized off the top of my head. I don't know what the Hebrew word is for pride.
Mm-hmm.
I would be curious what shame looks like in the Bible as far as a word goes in real time processing. So I would want to look into that, but I can agree with your statement that anytime that we are uncertain about our identity, either of those two things are a product for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think they're both rooted in just extreme fear and shame. One just looks different than the other. One takes a passive approach, one takes a really controlling approach.
So, what do you see as the danger of a person that engages spiritual bypassing?
Well, again, I have a lot of compassion just because I understand what it did to me. It cost me really knowing how much the Father loves me and really experiencing his tangible presence in moments of pain. Cost me being really authentic in relationships with my kids, with the people around me, which if you're not being authentic, you're never going to feel fully seen and known. So therefore you're never going to feel connected. So it cost me just feeling connected with the people around me. Definitely. Yeah, I think it cost me a ton of peace, a ton of peace, a ton of joy. Because righteousness, the kingdom is righteousness, peace, and joy. And righteousness is knowing who I am to my good daddy. And so when I can come to him authentically me, be not only received, but loved on, then I have peace and it brings me lots of joy because I know he's going to take good care of me. So I have lots of hope and joy. So yeah, I think that is there. I think it just cost a level of intimacy again, just because if you're not being completely honest, then you're not being completely vulnerable and we connect in vulnerability.
Mhm.
Intimacy is created in vulnerability. And so you're missing out on a level of intimacy with God and with the people across from you.
So, when you catch somebody
Mhm.
in spiritual bypassing, do you tell them to stop it?
I don't tell people what to do. I'll just ask a lot more questions. And then
How do you address that habit structure with somebody? How
yeah,
would you?
I often will say, "What's so scary about giving yourself permission to feel that?"
Let's ask the audience.
Go ahead.
You have a much
What's so scary?
This may sound like God asking you this.
No, it wouldn't. Yeah, I just will ask, what is scary about acknowledging the hurt? Like, what is keeping you from really addressing what's hurting? And yeah, and it's kind of hard to just coach a camera, like, because yeah, just waiting for them to respond and then just keep asking questions out of curiosity. But again, oftentimes it's going to come down to, I
supposed
would
to have an
say,
impromptu here.
I don't know. I would say most of again, I don't want to use absolutes, but I kind of want to in this situation. It's going to come down to you're believing a lie about who God is and his nature and how he wants to show up for you, or you're believing a lie about yourself. Yeah. Yeah. And then just discovering what that is and then walking them through a process to receive truth in exchange for that lie.
Anything else that you want to cover on the topic of spiritual bypassing?
I definitely don't have it all figured out at all. Up until this conversation, I had only processed it through my lens of the things I did, which was go to worship, go to slap at scripture on it, go to declarations. And I had not processed it through your perspective at all. So there's a lot to chew on there. But definitely have a ton of compassion. I'm not judging anybody. My goodness, at all. I hope this never sounds like I know this one doesn't sound like we have it all figured out because it was real time
Yeah.
processing.
We may have to edit a long pause frequently throughout the episodes.
Yes. But yeah, it's just thoughts
Insert
I
our own
have.
commercials.
Yes. Yeah. I think for me, and I coach myself more than anybody. And when I find myself struggling to be honest, the first sign I get is I start feeling numb. And if I am not feeling emotion, then I'm like, whoa, what did I miss? What did I not process? And so I'll oftentimes even ask Holy Spirit, like, what am I ignoring? Because that's my go to. Let's just pretend it's not happening. Let's pretend it's not hurting. And so then just recognizing I have not really processed that and then given myself space to process it. And oftentimes it's not even regards to what somebody has done to me, right? Like you have experienced this. My sweet dad, right, went through had a terrible stroke and is nonverbal still. And so I miss being able to pick up the phone.
Mhm.
And there are times when I'm missing him. And if I don't take pause and just acknowledge, hey, I miss my dad today. Really would love to. We've talked about this a lot. I would really love to ask him if he watched that run on whatever. Right. And so I think just giving myself space and there's no accusation to anybody.
Mhm.
But if I give myself space to just, but that hurts today. Right? And then just allow Holy Spirit to come in and comfort me. And then for sure, I'm going to continue to intercede for my dad and pray for complete healing
Mhm.
and restoration to his speech, but in his whole body. But I'm not ignoring that it hurts in that moment.
Sure.
And so I think that's kind of what I'm talking about is if I didn't allow myself space to say, oh gosh, that hurts today, right? And just start slapping scripture on it, then by the end of the week, our house would probably be Cloroxed from top to
Mhm.
and every weed pulled in the yard and all that, right? And I wouldn't be connected to anybody. I'd be in go mode. So,
Well, it is definitely an area. The goal is to create awareness.
mhm,
The goal isn't to fix anything.
I can't fix anybody. Thank God.
Yeah. We can't fix anybody for sure. However, we can have really hard conversations. Well, yes, but not all of those are video worthy.
True.
My third grade humor isn't always entertained by the masses.
Our conversations and Nacho Libre quotes.
Well, because this will be on the World Wide Webs,
Mhm.
we would definitely love to hear comments, chime
And
in.
insights. Yeah.
Perhaps somebody is a more profound expert on spiritual bypassing.
Mhm.
We would pull up a third chair. Right now, we're just holding it in reservation with Jesus. Because, yeah, I think that's what's fun about these are just conversations that oftentimes aren't really all that different than us sitting at the house. But hope that it is something that you find some value in. Again, it's the goal is just to talk about things that aren't always talked about.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's more clear than others. Sometimes we process it real time as we're having it. But thanks for sharing.
Hey, thanks for sitting across from me to have a conversation. This and windshield time. It's my favorite. Captive audience of Britain.
Captive audience. In case you're wondering, he's calling out my spiritual bypassing, which is go to work,
I value your desire to work hard.
diligence.
Mhm.
Until next time, enjoy.